What's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the Wilder versus Zhang breakdown and prediction video, as we are going to break down the huge heavyweight showdown between former longtime WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder as he battles Zhang, the former interim champion. They will collide on Saturday, June 1st from Saudi Arabia, as they are going to top off that card now. They are now the new main event. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So, this fight, if you haven't seen one of my breakdown videos before, I discuss the fight, what it means, overall, what's at stake, everything. Then I will get into each fighter. And in a non-title fight like this, I usually do the talk about the A side and the B side, and there really isn't a clear A and B in this one. Actually, I think Zhang might be a slight favorite. I haven't really looked at the odds, but I'm going to discuss Wilder first, and then we'll move over to Zhang. But we get into each fighter, what they've done, rolling in, ask the same questions at the end. I ask one last question and then give my prediction. So let's get into this big-time heavyweight matchup. It is, as I said, it's the new main event on the pay-per-view card on June 1st. It was supposed to be Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol for the undisputed light heavyweight title. Beterbiev had a meniscus tear, so he's out. Bivol, I don't know if he's still fighting on that card, but this has been upgraded to the main event, and it tops a 5 versus 5 Queensberry versus Matchroom card, and it's basically the 5 best, the 5 picked fighters from Matchroom and the 5 picked fighters from Queensberry, which is Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn with Matchroom. This fight, Eddie Hearn chose Deontay Wilder to be his captain. He's also a wild card pick because he's not technically with Matchroom. And Zhang is with Frank Warren and tied to top rank. So for that, it's somewhat of a big deal for that purpose, but it's more for what lies ahead for the winner here. Deontay Wilder has a showdown with the next undefeated American heavyweight on the rise, Jared, the real Big Baby Anderson. That's supposed to be on the Crawford-Madrimov card that's a couple months later, as long as Wilder, if he's victorious, as long as he's up to returning what would be, I think, 9 weeks later, 8 or 9 weeks later. Again, that's up to whether he feels up to returning that big quick of a turnaround. And then Zhang still has a rematch with Joseph Parker on the table, or other options open if he's victorious. So a lot is at stake for the winner of this fight. And both these guys are coming off losses to Joseph Parker. Actually, combined in their last 8 fights, 4-4, they have a combined record of 3-5. So these two guys, Zhang has lost 2 of his last 4. You have Deontay Wilder's lost 3 of his last 4. So these guys desperately need a win, and it's a battle of 2 bombers, 2 guys that are just, they just throw and chuck bombs. And to me, not completely stylistic, but in terms of the power, I liken it to when Wilder fought Luis Ortiz, in terms of the kind of power that Zhang possesses. Now, he's not the complete boxer that Ortiz was, but he's not too far from that. He packs a huge punch, and he's also a southpaw, and he's around the same size as Ortiz. So I really think it's somewhat, could somewhat be on the level of those two fights that Wilder had with Luis Ortiz. So a lot at stake, very big fight right here for these two men. Crossroads fight for sure. Zhang is 41, Wilder is 38. These two guys, the winner has to, I mean, it's huge. It's a must-win fight. The loser, especially if he gets knocked out, he's really going to have to contemplate if he's going to continue or not. So, again, a lot at stake. Now, let's get into the into each fighter. We start with the former longtime WBC heavyweight champion of the world, Deontay Wilder from the United States. Wilder enters this fight, hasn't been the most active fighter. He's fought once per calendar year, actually in his last 4 fights. COVID had something to do with that as well. But as I said, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. I normally talk about the last 3 fights for a fighter. I'm going to go back one more for each one of these guys and talk about their last 4. Wilder, his last 4 fights date back to February of 2020. Yeah, February 2020, right before the pandemic, when he took on Tyson Fury in their rematch, and Fury beat the shit out of him, handed him his first loss, and took the WBC title with a 7th round TKO over Wilder. They would return against each other over a year and a half later in October of 2021, and in their 3rd fight, Wilder would challenge Fury because he had an automatic rematch, and these two guys went to war. That was my fight of the year, a fantastic fucking fight. Wilder would score a couple knockdowns, but would end up getting knocked out in the 11th round of that fight as Fury retained the WBC title. Wilder would take a year off. He would return in October of 22, taking on Robert Helenius, and would catch Helenius with a short right hand right down the pipe that knocked him out in the 1st round of that fight. And then his last fight came 14 months later in December of last year, 2023, when he took on Joseph Parker and came in a big favorite on the Day of Reckoning card, had the Anthony Joshua fight looming for March, and he would get completely outworked and outclassed against the fellow former champ Parker, as Parker scored a major upset and got a unanimous decision in that fight. Now, coming into this one, this is his fastest turnaround in the last 4 years. He has not had a turnaround like this, actually, since the rematch with Luis Ortiz to the rematch with Fury, which was in November of 2019, to the rematch with Fury, which was in February of 2020. So this is the quickest turnaround in between fights since then for Wilder, which is about a little over 5 months. So Wilder needs to come into this fight hungry, and I think he is. With Wilder even entertaining a potential fight in August, I think he's taking this very serious now. I think he's pissed off about the Parker fight. I think he completely overlooked Joseph Parker, because people coming into that, myself included, Joshua seemed to be the guy on the hot seat on the Day of Reckoning card against, God, what the fuck is his name? That southpaw that he fought, Adewale. He seemed to be the guy on the hot seat, where Wilder seemed to be the heavy favorite. Oh yeah, Wilder's gonna knock Parker out for sure. I think he drank too much of the Kool-Aid, and I think he completely overlooked Parker. I think he's coming back here in this fight right now. I think he's ready. It's not, yeah, of course the money, he's gonna get paid fat for this fight, but I think he wants to win this one. I think he wants those bigger paydays. I don't think he wants to be looked at as over the hill, as I think he's got a lot to prove, because his pride was damaged badly against Tyson Fury, and I think the Parker fight added to that, and now I think he's going to be refueled. He's not fighting an awkward fighter that can box. Zhang can box, but he's also a stationary target. Zhang does not move around a lot. He's an older guy. So I think Wilder's coming into this one pumped up and ready. I think he's going to be ready for this fight. Now, what does Wilder need to do to defeat Zhang? First off, he needs to. I looked at the weights for his last 3 fights, and he weighed his normal in his last 2 fights were about the same. It was 214 and 213. That's his average weight that he normally comes in at. For Tyson Fury, the 3rd fight back in their 3rd fight, he came in a little heavier. He came in about 238. I don't think he needs to weigh that much, but I do think between 225 and 230 would be smart for Wilder in this one, because Zhang is a big guy. Zhang, his last 3 fights have been 278, 287, and then I think 291. So he comes in heavy. And if he imposes that weight on Wilder, and Wilder is not in really good conditioning, I think it could hurt him. So I think Wilder weighing a little bit more, even 220, would be beneficial for him. But he doesn't have to. I'm just saying, I believe that might work. Now, in terms of what he needs to do in the ring itself, I think Wilder needs to jab, which I say that every time he fucking fights. But I think Wilder, if he does jab, can set up his huge monster right hand, and I think he can hurt Zhang. You know, I do. So Wilder, in my opinion, can knock out anybody. That's how vicious his right hand is. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge Wilder fan. I like him, but I'm not a huge fan of his. But he has the deadliest power I've ever seen in boxing, period. The guy is insanely strong. And you know, with his power, and you know, if he sets up that right hand, moves his feet a little bit, because he is the younger of the 2, he's going to be the lighter of the 2. If he can box in this one even a little bit, he will have success, in my opinion. So that's what I think he needs to do to set it up to win. Now, can Deontay Wilder knock out Zhang? Absolutely. I don't have any doubt that Deontay Wilder can knock out anybody in the sport of boxing. He's that strong. He's that powerful with his one punch. I think he can break down Zhang and stop him in the later rounds, and I think he can one punch sleep him as well. Now, do I think, can Deontay Wilder win a decision over Zhang? And I think he can win a decision, yes. Zhang doesn't throw a ton of punches. If he comes in about the same conditioning that he did for the Parker fight, you're not going to see a ton of punches getting thrown. I don't think Wilder can blow him out of the water with a decision, but I do think he can win a decision. What is more likely, though, for Wilder if he beats Zhang? A knockout or a decision? I have to think a knockout is insanely more likely for Wilder in this one. No doubt. Now, what does a win mean for Deontay Wilder? A win keeps him in that serious mix. A loss would, a win would keep him in that serious mix. Like, eventually he's going to get a 4th Fury fight or a Joshua fight. Obviously, it keeps the door open for the Jared Anderson showdown. And so a win means a lot. This, honestly, Wilder should be going into this fight like this is the biggest fight of his career. And I think to an extent he is, because Wilder loves the paydays. He wants to keep these fat paydays coming like this. He needs to win this fight, and I think he knows that. So a win means a lot for Deontay Wilder. What does a loss mean for Deontay Wilder here against Zhang? A loss would fucking hurt Wilder. He could still fight, but he's not going to be taken as serious if he loses his fight. If he gets knocked out, oh, that's going to be bad. That's going to be bad. Honestly, if Zhang gets knocked out, I don't think Wilder fights again. I think Wilder would retire if he loses. So a loss would be devastating to Wilder. If he were to lose like a close decision, that'd be different. But I have a hard time believing this is going to the scorecard. So that's it on Deontay Wilder. Let's switch over and we look at the former interim champion Zhang. And again, we're going to look at the last 4 fights for Zhang, because Zhang, even though he comes in as the heavier fighter on average, he's been the more active fighter by far. His last 4 fights date back to August of 2022. So this is his 5th fight in less than 2 years, which is good. You know, that was his first pro loss, though, a close, somewhat controversial decision loss to Filip Hrgović. Zhang lost that fight by a very close decision. Some people thought he won. I think he got knocked down once in that fight against Hrgović. But he was definitely in that fight, and it was a good, hard battle right there. Then in April of last year, 2023, he came in a monster underdog against the most feared man in the division, Joe Joyce, the Juggernaut, and he busted his eye in the first 2 rounds. The eye swelled up badly, and he teed off on Joe Joyce. The fight was stopped after 6 rounds, and he became the new WBO interim champion in what was was a top candidate for upset of the year. Joyce had an automatic rematch clause. Zhang almost got the Tyson Fury fight, and then Joe Joyce activated the rematch clause. So these 2 guys got back together in September of last year, 2023. A lot of people thought Joe Joyce, it was just a fluke. His eye swelled up, and he would bounce back against Zhang. And Zhang left no doubt. He destroyed Joe Joyce in just 3 rounds, brutally knocking him out. No eye being swollen in this one. Joyce was just completely gunshot and could not pick up the win as Zhang dominated him and retained the WBO interim title. Then in March of this year, just 3 months, it's going to be less than 3 months going into this fight, Zhang would defend his interim title against former WBO champion Joseph Parker, who was coming off the Deontay Wilder victory. And in a surprising turn of events, Zhang would score a couple knockdowns, but would get completely outworked against Parker and lose a 12-round majority decision in this one, dropping his second loss in 4 fights. Both of his losses, though, were close decision losses. So Zhang is coming into this fight. I think he's pissed off about the loss to Parker. I don't think he could pass up a showdown with Wilder, and I think that's why he took this fight. But I do think he's hungry, and I do think he's coming to win. Zhang is a spirited fighter that enjoys fighting. He's coming into this one poised and ready to go. What does he need to do to win this fight, though? He needs to come in with that killer instinct and almost treat it as he's got nothing to lose, the way he did against Joe Joyce in both fights and against Hrgović, because his drive and desire going in against Parker, I think, was different because he came in a solid favorite. Came in the underdog in the Hrgović and first Joyce fight. Even it was split down the middle to an extent in the second Joyce fight. Came in a heavy favorite against Parker, and or a solid favorite, and he got shocked and lost. So I think he needs to treat it as he is the underdog in this fight, and he needs to have that killer instinct. But he also, in my opinion, needs to lose some fucking weight. I think he needs to get down to the not the Hrgović fighting weight, the first Joyce fight, which was 278. He weighed up at 291 in the last fight against Parker, and he looked like he was completely gassed the last few rounds of that fight. So I really think he needs to come in better shape in this one, so he can move around better, because Wilder doesn't move a lot himself. So if he can, this is not the same opponent like Hrgović and Parker that move better and box a little more. Wilder's going to be there to be hit, but what you got to worry about is his big right hand, about getting hit in return. So I think Zhang needs to come in good shape so he can move in this fight. Now, in the ring, what does he need to do to beat Deontay Wilder? I think he needs to box. He needs to take a piece from Luis Ortiz. I said to me it was a similar style clash as to the Ortiz fights. I think he needs to look at both Luis Ortiz fights, and I think he needs to do something similar but more aggressive. Wilder is not his timing, I don't believe, is as good as it used to be in those fights where he can just, I mean, he can probably still land that big right hand, but I don't think it's going to be as accurate. Let me just say that. He missed a lot of those against Parker. His timing probably going to be better than it was against Parker, so he needs to be ready for that punch in return, that right hand. But if Zhang can box the way Ortiz did and be a little bit more aggressive, he might be able to get to the target of Deontay Wilder and hurt him bad. But he needs to be able to move to do that. So again, the conditioning needs to be on point. Now, can Zhang win this fight by knockout? I think he can. He's definitely a more powerful puncher than Tyson Fury was. He's also a heavy body like Fury was, but he doesn't tower over Wilder. That's the difference in this fight. He doesn't tower over him. So I'm not sure if that's exactly the style he needs to employ, but I think one punch power, he can hurt Wilder, and I definitely think he can overwhelm him and stop him. Now, can Zhang win a decision? God, if this one gets to a decision, I'd be surprised, but I do think Zhang, if it goes to the scorecards, would be the more likely to win on a decision than Wilder. But it's tough to see it going that far. Now, as I say that, what's more likely for Zhang if he's victorious? A knockout over Wilder or a decision? To be honest, I think knockout's a little more likely, but not by a long shot. You know, if Zhang wins this fight, it might have to be by a decision. You know, he might have to outbox him, outwork him, and stay away from the big right hand, much the way Parker did. So yeah, that might need to be his strategy. Now, what does a win mean for Zhang? It would be even bigger than the Joe Joyce fights, just because Deontay Wilder is such a big name. And if Zhang knocks him out, that's, you know, Zhang, that's a huge, I mean, he probably retires Wilder if he knocks him out. So a knockout would be huge for Zhang. So that would be big. But any kind of win would enhance his career and push him forward, and he really needs that. Now, what does a loss mean for Zhang? It would depend on how he loses. If he gets brutally knocked out in this fight, he might need to start considering retirement. But Zhang is one of those guys, like, you know, I mean, his style is attractive. He can make a lot of money. He's got a good base of fans behind him from his country in China. He can probably still fight. So I think he needs to come into this fight with the he's got nothing to lose type of mentality. And because I really think a loss hurts Wilder more in this one than it does Zhang. That's just me. Okay, so is it better for boxing if Zhang wins this fight or if Deontay Wilder wins this fight? And I don't think many people would argue that it's better for boxing if Wilder wins. Wilder is a powder keg. He's a huge name in the sport. He brings a lot of dollars to the table. That explosive power, his style. I mean, don't get me wrong, Zhang has really good power too, but he's 3 years older. He doesn't have the American fan base that Deontay Wilder does. And it's just better for boxing if Wilder wins. It really is. He's a more attractive, you know, name in the sport that people will follow. Now, finally, and let me say, I don't think it'd be bad for boxing if Zhang won. It's just a lot better for boxing if Wilder wins. Now, the final. What is my prediction for this huge heavyweight showdown between Deontay Wilder and Zhang? It's tough to say. I do think it's close to 50-50, but I really see a right hand down the pipe on Zhang that is going to lay his ass out. I really, really see that for Deontay Wilder. I still think that, you know, as we always say, the last thing to go in a fighter is his power. And Deontay Wilder, as I said earlier, has the most explosive punching power I've ever seen. And I think one big right hand down the pipe is going to lay out Zhang. Now, he's got to be cautious and careful because Zhang could land a huge punch as well. And that's why I think Zhang can definitely win this fight at any moment as well. But I believe Deontay Wilder is going to be the one to land the big money punch, knocking out Zhang and potentially winning, you know, the 5 versus 5 thing, but punching a ticket for Jared Anderson. So we'll see what happens, but that's it. That's what I got. That is my Wilder versus Zhang breakdown and prediction video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.